I think it's working. My voice is not working, but we are live. Hi, besties and bosses. How are you doing? Did you all survive the big Facebook, Instagram? I guess we had a crash yesterday. I was joking on Instagram. I didn't even realize that it went down because I was on client calls, but I just opened up my feed to all of these posts talking about it. And it was just sort of an interesting thing for me. Obviously, you know, if you're on it, it can be maybe alarming, but just one of those things that just reminded me that sometimes the biggest problems we have in business or in life are because we're just so focused on them. And sometimes when you just don't focus on a problem or look at it, it will resolve itself. I find that to be true so often. All right, I see myself in the group. Here we are. I am having such a fun day. I got to guest teach inside Amanda and Sophie B. They're in our group here. They have a group program, and I got to guest teach in there this morning on one of my favorite topics about creating sustainable, reoccurring 5-figure months. So that was fun. And now I get to hang with you all, and I've got client calls later. I feel like this is just a very good Wednesday. So before we dive into today's topic, first say hi if you're here. Let me know you're live. We're going to talk about celebrating 8 years in business, which is mind-boggling to me. And I'm going to share some of the biggest or the most impactful lessons that have contributed to my success and my staying power. I'm also going to share a little bit of, if I were going to start over now, what are some of the things I would tell myself if I were starting business today. Let's see, we have giveaways because, 8 years of business warrants a giveaway. So if you join me live anytime, just leave me a comment, say your hi, drop me an emoji. We're going to give away one VIP strategic scaling planning session. This is a full-length coaching session, and if you're not in the place of scaling, we can look at this more in terms of strategic planning for your business to grow you to whatever that first goal is. Maybe it is 5-figure months like I was just teaching around this morning. So we're going to give away one of those. If you've already won or had a free session with me, we're going to try to opt for people who haven't had one, but please still comment and engage with me because I love to hear from you all. Laura says, hi, happy 8 years celebrating with you. Thank you for celebrating with me for Biz's birthday. I appreciate you. The other announcement for you all, this is super fun. So, and this is important to say, we are not doing this again this year. This is the only time we're doing this. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense for us. But our last masterclass, 20K months multiplied, I think it's the one I've gotten the most feedback from. I should find the screenshot, but I had someone reach out to tell me that they got so much out of it. It made them cry, which just made me so happy, like happy tears, because it was what they needed, and they watched it 5 times and took notes from it. And so I heard that, I was like, okay, well, we weren't gonna make this evergreen, but my team turned that masterclass evergreen for you. But the reason I'm telling you we're not gonna do this again is we are having masterclass in April. We'll have a couple more this year, and we're not turning any more evergreen. So I want you to know that. So if there's one coming up you want to join, please sign up and join us for that, because we won't keep turning them evergreen. It doesn't make sense for team and where we're spending time and effort. But this one, just because clearly it's something that I think was valuable for all of you, I wanted to make sure we made it accessible to you. So I'll drop a link for that afterwards here. And we'll make sure we're promoting in the group, but you can grab access to that. We're walking through the 5 components you need to sustainably scale. And there's a playbook that goes along with this. And again, I think it's really valuable. And whether you're not looking, if you're not looking for 20K months or 250K years or above, even if you're looking to grow to your first 6 figures, I think everything in this class is still really, really relevant to you. So that will be available to you. But again, we're not doing that again this year, so don't miss out on my other master classes. Claire says, happy birthday. I miss how many you're celebrating? Just hopped on. No, we're just getting started. I'm just sharing fun giveaways. So I'm celebrating 8 years in business, and I said this in the email. But y'all, it's funny. It's one of those things, y'all have to tell me, because I know, Laura, I know you and Claire have both been in business for a second. It's one of those things where I both feel like, wow, I cannot believe I've been in business for 8 years. And I know the stats for business owners. I know the stats for women in business in particular, just in terms of how few businesses are still profitable after 3 to 5 years, but definitely after 8. And we have a very, very profitable, we have quite a high profit margin with our business, but also it's a female-owned business. So, I both feel like, wow, this is such a milestone, 8 years. I very proud of that, very much celebrating that. And then the other part of me is it feels like a blip. I feel like I'm just getting started. The class I was teaching this morning, I was talking about how I still feel like in many ways I have that beginner's mindset, and everything I'm doing in business right now, right? I'm revisiting things that I was 8 years ago and tightening them up, and I'm still a beginner in my own business. So it feels very much that bothness. And maybe that's the first thing just to share, because I think there's this way in which 8 years ago, I probably thought I'd get to a place in business and feel like I've arrived. And look, in many ways I have, in that I'm very successful. I make great money. I take home great money. I've been fully booked for 5.5 years now. Right, we've made 55 consecutive 10 to 40K cash months, right? All of these things, like, that is absolutely successful. Like, we could say, like, I've arrived in air quotes, but I think there's just something to business, that business is an ongoing journey, and it's a game, at least to me, a game in that, like, I always want to be playing this game to win, that we're just always going to be refining and sharpening. And I don't think there's like this end point. It's sort of like mindset work. So I don't know if you all feel that way, but that's definitely been my experience, to the degree that, so last week, March 1st, is when I had my 8-year business anniversary, and such a, like, really let myself soak that in. Or what, a week, not even a week out, we're 5 days out, and my mind goes, that was a lifetime ago. I feel like I've grown a lifetime from my 8-year anniversary on the 1st to, what is it, March 5th. And I think that's just something where it's like, it both feels like these things in business can feel like a blip, but also how much we can grow and evolve in even short amounts of time, and how much we're always growing and evolving just feels very true for me. So maybe that's not the lesson you thought I would share, but that's the first one there. I'm gonna pull up, I wanted to take a couple notes here for myself. I have so many things that I've learned after the 8 years. So obviously, and I should have to set a timer so that I don't miss my client call after this, that I forgot to do because I was guest teaching before. So apparently after 8 years in business, you can still forget to do things like this. Okay, there we go. I wanted to share some things that felt really true and relevant, and not just some cliche things like, I don't know, be positive or be open to failing forward. I wanted to share some lessons I really have learned. And there's no way we're going to get to all of them, because once I started writing a bunch of these, just poured out. And I want to make sure we close. I do want to speak a little bit to, if I were starting my business today, some of the things I would want to think about. And I do think, this is almost a different conversation. It's why I'm pausing. I do think when we get to that part of the conversation, there's also something to be said for, in many ways, business is business. Foundational business principles are tried and true and always will be tried and true. But I've now been in the online space. So I've been coaching for 10 years and in business for 8. I took a year-long coaching program and then coached while I was just on the side, sort of for fun, for practice, before deciding to start my business. So I've been in the online space and the business space for 10 years, and the tried and true business principles are exactly the same, but business in the online space is not exactly the same. And so I also think there are some things I would tell today, Kim, that are different than what I would have told Kim 8 years ago or 10 years ago, because I do think our landscape has changed quite a bit, but I don't want to go too far down that rabbit hole. Okay, let's just, there's so many things here. And I'm also curious for those of you now and on the replay who have been in business for a second, no pressure here, but if there's like one nugget, like, is there one thing where you're just like, this is the thing I didn't expect, or this is the lesson I didn't expect? I would love to hear that from you. Laura says, so true. It feels like forever in a minute. Yep, it really feels like forever in a minute. And I think maybe that's just helpful for everyone to remember. I think that's the case with most great things in life. Okay. These are not in any particular order. These aren't like in order of importance. They're more just in order of kind of what jumped out for me. But one of the first things that was coming to me, so my business journey, a lot of what slowed my growth, I don't want to say it held me back, but it slowed my growth at the start. And a lot of what helped me kind of then catapult and grow my business very quickly from, struggling and making maybe 800, 1,000, 3,000 a month, and then jumping to 10K, and right from 10K to 24 months and kind of sustaining that sense, has been on the mindset side of things. Now, we're going to talk about this in one of my other lessons. This does not mean strategy has not been wildly important, and I don't focus on that a lot. And that's actually been one of my biggest focuses the past, I'd say, year and a half. But the mindset component has really been big. And when I look back, and like just one of the things, I'm like, wow, this is not what I would have expected to be true. But I know so much in my early years. And I was talking about this in the class I just taught. I feel like so much of the way I ran my business or showed up was really coming from a defensive standpoint instead of an offensive place of wanting to win the game of business, right? I was more playing defensively to not lose at business. And what I mean by this is I just had so much that I was doing where I was like, how do I do this in a way that's not cringy? How do I do this in a way that doesn't make me look bad? How do I show up to sell without looking like I'm selling? How do I not seem slimy and gross? How do I not seem like one of those people, whatever that fucking meant in my head? right, that are like icky and gross online. I don't even know if I had to come across anyone icky and gross online, right? This was just in my head. How do I not get rejected, right? How do I not have that person from high school that I haven't talked to in probably 20 years see my post and judge me? How do I not have the people from my day job see my stuff because I know for a fact they were judging me, right? So much of the way I was showing up was really this way of a defensive strategy of how can I protect myself? How can I avoid getting hurt, right? How can I avoid the things I don't want? How can I not lose? Instead of how can I play offensively to win the game of business? And I'm wearing headphones. I'm hoping y'all this is blocking out the crazy construction noise we have in the background. Let me know if that's working or not. I think I shared this in the Path to Consistent 10K Months, my other masterclass that we do have evergreen for you. But this is just, that was just one of those pivotal shifts for me, is when I made that shift. And I was just looking back at what a difference that has made in my business, and how when I went from being on the defense to being on the offense and thinking of how do I avoid losing instead to how do I win, right? How do I play to win? That changed so much for me. And I think what's really interesting when I look back is so much of what I tried to protect myself against, right, to defend against in those early years in business. Here's the irony: 8 years later, half of that shit's never happened. And some of it has. Some of the stuff I was worried about, right, has, but like the really big stuff I was worried about, I think this is just the interesting thing about our worry, anxious brains, right? Usually the really, really big stuff we're worried about never happens. A lot of times the in air quotes bad stuff or negative stuff that happens, we could never have predicted or protected against, right? Because life, like I could have never predicted we were going to have COVID, and that was something that we were going to have to navigate. I could have never predicted my dad was going to get sick, right? And that I was going to have to go home and try and navigate my business and like those things, like the big things that were actually hard. I could have never predicted those things. And some of the other big worries I had have never, I mean, knock on wood, they've never happened, right? I've never had like 100 people come hate on me for a post I've written, or like the stuff that, never had someone come after me saying like what a horrible, slimy business owner I am. The worries we have in our head. But some of the things I worried about did happen, and I share that because the takeaway I get from that, and just what's been really fascinating, are a couple of things. One, most of the time when those things have happened, they just honestly haven't been that big of a deal, right? I made them so big in my head in those early years in business, and then when something happened, a client failed on a payment, someone ghosted me, right? I had a client who's a lovely human, but maybe not the right fit for my container, and I have to navigate that. I have a sticky situation with a team member, I don't know, whatever the things I was trying to protect against, right? They actually haven't been that big of a deal in real time. The fear and the worry in my head made them so much worse than what they actually are. And I think we just forget this so often, how really well equipped we are. And I really believe universe, God, life doesn't give us circumstances, situations we can't handle. And I don't know if I've used this analogy before, but has anyone ever done trapeze? I took a trapeze class years ago on the water here in the city. So it's like not only are you climbing this high thing to do trapeze, but it's on like a pier on a building, like above the water. So you're like extra high above the city. You can like see the city when you're doing it. And I remember the scariest part of that class was walking up the stairs, seeing everything around me, and standing on that ledge with like, I don't even know how many, we're probably like 20 stories high. That was the scariest part of that class. When I actually jumped off, right, and had to learn how to do the flips and do the things, like when I was actually in motion, when I was actually doing the work, it actually wasn't that scary, and I was able to handle everything, even when I fell, right? I was able to handle those things. It was just what my mind built it up to be that was so much worse than the situation in actuality. And that's just something that has really been eye-opening to me to see, is that some of the things did happen, right? Like we can't protect ourselves from everything, and also things that I could have never predicted happen. But in real time, I've both like been able to handle them, and none of them have actually been as awful as my mind thought they needed to be, to the degree that I needed to avoid them. In fact, most of the, in air quote, bad things, if I had to do it all over again, I probably would just run at them faster, because in some ways they've served my business or my growth, or I mean, sometimes it sounds effed up, but sometimes like really crazy things that happen that you didn't want to have happen become really great marketing opportunities, right? Like they serve us even better than you could imagine. So I think that is one of those ones that this isn't what I would have expected I would have said, but it is a helpful reminder for me because I do really operate, 95% of the time, I'm still human, my business now from the place of how do we play to win and how do we play on the offense, right? How do we try to score points instead of defend against getting hurt? Knowing that when I try to score points, right, any football team that's ever won the Super Bowl tries to make a ton of passes and tries to score a ton of touchdowns and doesn't make every single one, right? Knowing that when I'm playing in the offense, it's not like that I'm never going to fumble the ball, right? I'm never going to have to jump into defense, but I have such a better chance of winning if I'm trying to score and win the game than if I'm just trying to stop, right, someone from scoring. Claire says, wow, that sounds so cool. That's so true. Yeah, I think, and it's this way for all of us, right? Outside of business as well. I think I'm a stepmom, so I can't speak to being a full-time parent, but for my parents, I'm sure the same is true, right, with kids and with parenting, right? So much of the stuff you worry about when it happens is not actually as bad as you think it's going to be. My stepson is in trouble right now. He got his phone confiscated at school. And like in some ways it's horrible. Like it's a big deal. We have to be good parents. And like, as my husband said, we have to make sure we don't raise someone who's going to be a butthole, as well as like, keep him safe. So there are important things for us there, but like the actual like bad thing happening it's almost laughable. And if anything, it's just a really great opportunity for us to show up and parent to help him not be a butthole, as opposed to like it being this like horrible thing we thought would happen if he like got a letter from the principal coming home or whatever that is. Hopefully he doesn't watch this live stream. I don't think he does. I do know he watches my Instagram, so I have to be mindful of what I share there. Okay, so that is one of those takeaways, or one of the impactful lessons that has come up for me. Let's see, what's the next one here? I'm just seeing. I made myself notes that are like, they're almost like too long to read. This is why I don't always make notes, y'all. Okay, so this has been when I feel like I've been on such a tear around this, and this has been really present for me recently as a business lesson takeaway, but it's one that's just been so true, and I can just see how leaning into this has just served my business over the last 8 years, and also how when I didn't lean into this, not that business was wrong or bad, but it just made everything so much harder. And that's truly understanding the concept of doing less better and focusing on doing less better. I feel like I've probably talked about this so many different ways in this group over the year or last year and a half, but it's because I have just really, I feel like it's taken me, it probably took me 7 years to actually fully grasp this concept and to really apply this concept. Because what I think is true is that I've gotten this concept. I've definitely never been like, do all the things, right? I pick and stick with strategy. All of that has always been pretty easy for me after, maybe the first squirrely year in business where I was literally trying all the things. But I think up until I'd say about year 7, I still was doing quite a ton. And I just sort of thought, I was like, well, if I just pick and stick to things, and then I can just try to do all of these things really, really well. And in my mind, that was doing less better. And what I've just really seen to be true, particularly as our online space just gets more and more saturated, is how doing less better actually means taking a look at everything you're doing and deciding what things to stop doing so that you can actually do fewer things, and then not just do fewer things, right? I think my brain was like, well, and then you just do fewer things, right? And you're good at them. Maybe that's a little cocky of me, but that's probably where my mindset was. But the focus I've really had that has just served me so well, and I think this is something that I just feel like almost like a maturity in business in this way, is really looking at my data, really looking at my business and saying, what are the few things, like how can we keep coming back to our strategy? How can we keep coming back to what we're doing? Where can we keep trimming the fat, so to say? Maybe that's a horrible phrase, but how can we keep trimming the excess? Where are the things that we are doing well, but they're just crowding us from doing a few things really, really well? Cutting those things and then really looking at what's left, and not just then doing that where it's like, great, now we're like saving time or we're more efficient, but then actually looking at, great, we're doing less. How do we actually improve upon everything we're doing? And as opposed to just like, let it be status quo. And I think that's the part that, look, we're always growing, evolving. It's kind of like we were talking about at the beginning of this live stream. And I don't mean this from a place of, I want to be mindful of how I frame this, because I think this can almost get heard to mean perfectionism or like the opposite of like done is good, like done is better than perfect, or whatever the phrasing is there. That's not what I mean, but I just really see with how saturated it is online, and at this stage of business, wanting to sustain my business and also scale it, and just also understanding that I think the opposite of perfectionism is mastery, and mastery is something, I talk about this a lot, right? We are always in mastery, developing our mastery. Mastery does not have an end point. It is something we are always developing and deepening. And I've just really seen how much it serves my business and me to stay in mastery, and with this concept of do less better, than to really look at things and to look at, great, I've been going live, for example, for what? We've had this Facebook group. I started this Facebook group the second or third year in business, and I've been going live every week since then. So, I've had this for over 6 years, this group. So I've been going live every week for over 6 years. I think it's really easy. Like, it'd be easy for me to be like, well, like, we got that. Like, this is super well oiled. This is super, like, this is working really well. But one of the things I've been thinking about, even just the last couple of months, I have an announcement I'm making in a couple of weeks, and some things were shifting up. But one of the things I've been thinking about is, great, how can I even do less better here, right? How can I bring you live streams that are just going to support you that much more? Or from a marketing perspective, how can I be that much more intentional, strategic with the title, or with the way we're describing this, or with how we're promoting this to my email list, right? How can I actually look at what are some of the things I can do less of, so that even the thing I've been doing for 6 years, I can do a better job with it? Not because I wasn't doing a good job, not because it wasn't working, not because it wasn't good enough, but because I've just seen how much this benefits my whole business in terms of efficiency with like time and team, but also in terms of results, and what a difference that makes on, I mean, literally with the clients and the money we're making in business, but also when I'm supporting clients, right? When I'm looking at clients who are making multi-6 and 7 figures, we're not looking at what shit can we add onto their plate. This is what we're looking at. We're looking at how can we refine stuff, because we talk about this as coaches so often. For those of you who are coaches, a 1 or 2 degree shift, right? A 1 or 2 degree like lever, like increase, and not necessarily in frequency, but just even in terms of how much we tighten something up. Think, what's the example we always hear? It's like a plane that leaves from Florida. If it has a 1 or 2 degree trajectory shift in the air over its flight course, it's the difference between like landing in Chicago or New York City, right? That's a huge difference between. It's the same for us. I'm just really seeing how those 1 to 2 degree micro shifts, because I'm doing less better, right? Like over time, how the difference then in terms of the results are massive, like exponential, both in profitability, because then you're not overspending on stuff that doesn't move the needle forward, but also on actual revenue, like results on the back end. Love this focus. Laura says construction noise is fine. Thank you. I can hear it, but in the background, I have my own construction noise here too right now. I'm not going to go down on a tangent. What I will tell you is 8 years of business and like 2 decades of mindset work, I have gotten very good at not being annoyed by circumstances I can't control, like construction, but I also find it irritating, if I'm completely honest, when we're live. But hopefully the headphones help a little bit. Laura says opposite of perfectionism is mastery. Ooh, yes, love this. Oh, so glad that lands. Yeah, I wish I could say I coined that. I feel like I read that somewhere years ago, and it just really stuck in my mind. It's like, yes, this is the thing we are all going for. So that has been a really, I feel like I'm like saying really a lot, but I cannot speak enough to how this, more than anything, has been a takeaway for me and a lesson for me. I know my first couple of years in business, and honestly, even probably at year 4 or 5, I'd say even, I don't know what year I was at, the year of COVID, which was one of my bigger years in business, but it was just a different time in the online space. I really think I heard do less better is like, great, and then master something to a certain degree, get it to be good enough, and then just keep doing more different things. And I have just seen how it's like, not that we don't want to stack certain things onto our strategy, of course that's necessary for everyone's business, but I have just really seen the benefit of, no, how do we stay really tight within even what we're stacking and go back to refining that? And it's one of the reasons with love, I'm not going to give you all more evergreen masterclasses this year, even though we'll have more masterclasses, because I want to make sure I'm refining my delivery to y'all. And if we have something that's going to be loving evergreen, right, that is something that we're really refining the delivery and what you're able to walk away with it and the results you're able to get from it, as opposed to just like, here's more and more stuff for you to consume that I've sort of like slapped together. We slapped things together, but I think y'all know what I'm meaning. Okay, let's go to the next one here. I'm trying to think if I have so many here. I'm like, which one do I feel like is going to be, because I know we're gonna run out of time here, that we're going to want to hear the most. All right, this one is like kind of the cheesy one. So maybe this isn't the most valuable for you, but I can't help but bring in a little bit of cheese here. And this one just also is, it's my truth, so y'all can bear with my cheese for a moment here. But when I look back past 8 years in business, when I look back at making 1.3 million in 5 years from one-on-one, I'm so obviously grateful for the success and for the money and for the life it's afforded me. And I think I've talked about this in different ways, but my husband got laid off a couple of years ago, that it's afforded us to like be able to have the life we do, and for him to pursue acting again instead of, being kind of stuck chasing a job he hates. And I'm so grateful for all of that. But the thing that I probably talk about to an annoying degree, but I'm just going to say it again here, that is something that I just feel like we sometimes lose sight of in the online space, that I'm just so grateful to pass Kim for, is remembering why I started my business and staying true to the work I wanted to do, and staying true to, doing things my way, but really staying in my lane and staying focused on what I believe I'm meant to do and the best way I know how to serve people, as opposed to just chasing ways to quickly scale and make more money. And I'm always mindful when I say this, because I support so many clients to scale. I'm here for scaling. I am scaling my business. I think that is a beautiful, beautiful thing in business, and we're here for that, right? And I want that for everyone. And I have just seen so many businesses in my 8 years crash and burn and come into this space and make some quick money and then not survive or not last, or hate their life, or spend all of their money in ads and trying to keep this really expensive engine going. And it's not to make anyone wrong, but I've just seen so much of that, and people come and go. And I think part of what's allowed me to not just have success, but to have staying power, like I have zero doubt I'm going to be in business for another 8 years and another 8 years and another 8 years after that, is that I'm doing the work I actually want to do, and I'm doing the work I love showing up for, and I'm serving clients that I love serving, and I'm serving them really well. And I have a very simple business, and yes, it's profitable and all those things, but I think that is a really big part of, or a big ingredient that I think sometimes we just forget about in our space. And this doesn't mean things won't change. It doesn't mean there isn't room to adapt or pivot or anything like this. It doesn't mean I won't ever have another offer, right? Like, I'm very willing to put things on the table, and things change over the years in business. But that piece more than anything, I think, has made my business worth it, so to say. And I feel like I can genuinely say I'm one of the happiest people I know, and one of the people who actually sincerely loves their business and every part of their business, from the process of serving clients. But I think that's a big reason for it. And I just can't speak enough to like remembering why you started your business, doing the work, on your terms. Obviously we have to have strategy. We have to, like, there's certain things we have to have in place for a business to make sense. I think we hear do things on your terms, and it's just like, fuck everything in business. And I'm just like not going to market and not do social media and like that, like whatever. I think our brain, and like, that's not what I'm talking about, but finding the model and the offer, and choosing the work you want to do that actually helps people over just trying to chase more and more money. Again, it might sound cheesy, but I cannot speak enough to how much that part has probably supported my staying power more than anything else. And how easy it would have been, I think, a couple of years ago to go down a different path, and that wouldn't have been wrong, right? I've got plenty of clients and I have plenty of peers who do. I don't think that would have been wrong at all, and I think that would have been successful. But, I froze. Oh, no, I'm back, okay. But I don't know that I'd be having the same conversation with you. Who knows, but I just don't know that I would be as lit up, or as like, yes, like I can't wait for another 8 years. Like, I am so happy and fulfilled in my business. So there's that part. Laura says 1,000% to this one. I know you get this one. So again, for all of you listening, that does not mean that I'm not saying one-on-one was the secret or one-on-one is right for anyone else. I have so many clients who would hate my business model, but it's what's right for me. It's why I started this business. I started this business because I love coaching. I just wanted to get paid well to be one-on-one with people and to support them and to watch those transformations. Like, I have a journal somewhere where it's like, I want to make $60,000 a year helping people make money and grow their business. It's literally what it says. Like, that's what I wanted. And so I think that is a Kim thing. It might not, I know I have a friend I hang out with, and sometimes she's like, your business sounds miserable to me. And I know that's the case for a lot of people. So it's not that that's the right way. It's just that's the right way for me. And I let myself get clear on that, even though the noise in our online space, especially at the time that I was, in the place to scale, very much was saying the opposite. And that's the piece I hope you'll hear from that more than anything. With that, another one of my lessons though, and maybe this will sound contradictory, but I think it's actually very, very much aligned with this. I've really just seen over the 8 years that business foundations and principles stay the same, and picking and sticking, like choosing things to do things your way. But I've also just seen how important it is to be willing to adapt to change and to pay attention to what is changing in your industry or the platform or with marketing or within just your industry overall. And with that, being very able to pay attention to that and to change along with it. And I think that is one of those things that can sometimes be confusing to people, because we hear things like pick and stick, or like choose one model and go all in, remember why you started, or have a simple strategy, or do less better, right? We hear things like this, and I think that can sound the opposite of what I'm saying here. But what I mean by this is, like, I'm not changing the core way I serve people, and that would be okay as well. But and my core strategy hasn't changed, but absolutely the way I execute and show up for some of my strategy has changed. My messaging has evolved. I've had to adapt many times and pivot so many times over the years. COVID happened. I mean, that was a big thing. 2023 happened, right? I think for most of us, we had to pivot quite dramatically. I'm now focused on Instagram more than Facebook. I mean, I love y'all. Y'all are still my OG number one, where I want to show up to do lives and hang out, but in terms of where I'm creating content. And if we even look at Facebook groups versus Instagram, the platforms have changed dramatically. When I started posting on Instagram 10 years ago, right, it was like a static photo. I think it was like grab quotes from Pinterest or something and you posted them on there, right? The way in which we show up in platforms, or to execute on strategies, or even what we're talking about in our industries. Like, I think the coaching industry has changed dramatically in the 10 years I've been in, and the conversations we're having, and the conversations for me as a thought leader, as someone who, I had a very different perspective, and I don't know if it's like a level of thought leadership, but just in terms of understanding and expertise at year 2 than I do at year 10 coaching and year 8 in business. And so all of that, I think, just being really willing to see, for as much as like pick and stick, and for as much as things don't change, and for as much as it's like go back to basics. Part of the reason I'm revisiting so many basics and doing less better is because I'm also really looking at what has shifted in our industry, what has shifted in the online space, what has shifted with marketing, what's working right now, and how can I really marry both, where it's like, how can I keep the core the same and see foundational business principles don't change, but also how can I be a smart, savvy business owner that is adapting to and noticing and paying attention to what's going on and evolving with that. And those two pieces have just really been a lesson for me, because I'm also someone who I'm great at consistency, and I'm great at like, let me do this thing, I'm just going to go all in on it. And I don't think I realized how adaptable I was until being given those opportunities, but I've seen how important it is to allow for that adaptability. And the other piece with this that comes up for me, and this is sort of like, remember why you started, the other piece, I think, this is like a twofold lesson that has come up for me, but I've both also seen how important it is, like, yes, remember why you started, and like do things your way and pick and stick, but I've found how to be able to do that, at least for me, I first needed to also be able to test and try all the things. And what a gift I gave myself as a business owner when I started, and still today. I've just always been willing, if there's something I'm not sure about, to test it and try it. And so, like, the reason I know the model I want, the reason I'm able to stay in my lane, the reason I'm able to know what works to do less better around is because I've also tested and tried a lot of things to know, don't like that, or I'm good at that but not great at that, or this doesn't actually help clients get the best results, or this works for us, but I know how the sausage is made, and this would require a whole lot to work for us even more, not the thing we want to focus on and double down on. But I wouldn't know that if I hadn't allowed myself to test and try. And I still take that mindset today, right? It's like, and I say still, because it's both like, it's been 8 years, but also I'm just getting started, right? We have to just be willing to test and try things, in my opinion. And that's, and then quickly get that information and make decisions around it. And then the other piece, like the opposite of this, and I think I talked about this on a live stream at the beginning of the year with some of the mindsets I'm taking into 2024, is also with that being really willing to put everything on the table. This is something my coach, Lacey Seitz, big shout out to her. She's been with me for six and a half of these 8 years. But we were having this conversation last year at some point, and just something that I've been thinking about and I'm slowly starting to play with on behind the scenes. But the conversation we were having is just being really willing to put everything on the table, meaning I think there is this way. It's sort of like the blessing and curse of being in business longer, is I have tested and tried a lot of things. I do know how the sausage is made. I have done a lot of the things, like I do have something that works really well. And I think in that way it can almost be that you get to a place where it's like you start ruling things out. And I think we have to remember what I said at the beginning of the conversation, we are always growing and evolving as business owners, and things change, we change. Our audience changes, our work changes, the industry changes, our life changes, our needs change. And so I think it's both like that pick and stick and remember why you started, but also remembering to be willing to put things on the table and to remember to continue to test and try things, even if you tested and tried something 8 years ago, right? Like the whole landscape might have changed. And so I feel like some of these almost sound like they're competing or contradictory concepts, but I really think they live together and have really supported me to not only create success now and to stay in business, but I think they're also what will support me moving forward over the next 8 years and the 8 years after that. Hopefully that makes sense, but if not, let me know if you have a question around that. All right, I know we're gonna hit time here, and I have I literally had a list of 20 lessons, but we wanted to go in depth, so hopefully those made sense. I did want to touch on just a little bit of like what I would tell Kim if she was starting her business today. And this is actually the one I didn't make notes on, because sometimes when I see posts or questions like this, I'm like, oh, well, what would I tell myself if I was starting my business today? Because there's this interesting thought that comes up for me as I sit with that question. And I think we talk about this here and on the podcast in so many different ways, but I think sometimes there is this way in which we can know too much for our own good. And I think about this with my 10 years in acting. I think if I had started acting knowing everything I knew 10 years into acting, I don't know if I actually would have started. And so sometimes I think, gosh, I have learned so much. There's so much I would want to be like, Kim, if you're starting today, here's like the shortcut. Here's how you don't go through all of the challenges and the hurdles. Like focus, like don't try all this stuff. Like pick one strategy. One-on-one's a thing for you. Get on a bunch of free calls. Don't make it overcomplicated. Invest in support as soon as possible, right? Like I think there are certain things I would say, and I'm also so aware that a couple things are true. There's such a gift when we're new to something because we don't know everything. And because of that, we do have that beginner's mindset, but then we are usually more willing to test and to try and to be adaptable. And we also means we don't have a bunch of bad patterns or bad habits or bad noise from the industry, or we don't know how challenging something might be, right? If when I started acting, I knew how challenging that industry actually was, I don't know that I would have booked 12 commercials or booked 12 indie films, right? I think part of the reason I was able to do that is I didn't find out the challenges until I was in the motion. And like what we were talking about with the trapeze example, right? If I had known all of that in advance, I could have just psyched myself up and never walked up the ladder. But the truth is, once you jump off the trapeze little stand and you're in the motion of it, sure, it's challenging, but it's actually kind of exhilarating and kind of fun and like not nearly as bad as you think it's going to be. When I was acting, the challenges were absolutely real. But when I was in the process of doing them, they were fun, they were enjoyable, I loved them. But if I had known all of that in advance, of like those, if I just heard about the challenges of it, I don't know that I would have wanted to move forward in the same way. Like I think I could have just psyched myself out. And so in some ways, when I think about like what would I want to tell past Kim, I wouldn't want to tell her too much, right? Because it's almost like I would have too much knowledge about how the sausage is made, that I think I could just psych Kim out if she was starting today, and or have her miss out on the very things that have led to 8 years in business. Because the truth is, I needed to fall on my face a couple of times. The truth is, I needed it to take the time it took to make my first 10K month, because that is probably where I learned and grew the most as a business owner. And if I hadn't had some of those, in air quotes, failures, if I hadn't had some of those challenges, if I had known it all in advance, right, I just don't know that I would have the expertise. I don't know that I'd be able to coach to the degree I am. Like, I think one of the reasons my clients get such incredible results that aren't statistically normal is because I did it at first, and I had to learn through some of those things. I also think it'd be really, we talk so much about unlearning, but I think I would probably put myself in a position where I'd tell myself a bunch of stuff that I'd have to unlearn. What I would say, and then I want to read Laura's comment, what I would say to myself, I think more than anything, like just if it was like today in 2024, what I would say is that it is saturated online, and that's not a lie, but saturation isn't a bad thing. And this is where it's like you can almost know too much for your own good. I think we hear saturation to be a really bad thing, and I think two things are true when we have a really saturated market. I do think in some ways it can be more daunting when you're starting, right? Because there's so much noise to sift through, both in terms of like what to learn and what to consume, but also in terms of like breaking through that noise. And I would probably tell me, if I was starting today, to like really be mindful of the noise I'm consuming, right? And really be mindful of the noise I'm contributing. But also to remember that saturation also means that there are that many more people. So yes, there's more supply, but that also usually means there's that many more people who are showing up to buy. I've used this example 1,000 times, and I'm going to use it again. I live in an area in New York City where it's quite popular for tourists to come, and there is a strip where I always avoid because it's very crowded, and I think there's something like 4 pizza restaurants literally next to each other, and all of them always have a line outside the door, and all of them are always busy, because not only is there room for everyone and there's more than enough to go around, but it's such a saturated area. It's so busy here, right? Like there's a need for 4 pizza places, because when one place is full, right, someone who came there for pizza is like, oh, well, that place is full, let me go to the place next door. That place is full, let me go to the place next door. And so there's this way in which saturation doesn't have to be a bad thing, but those 4 pizza places do need to make themselves a little bit different from one another, right? So differentiation is important. And so I would just be telling myself, don't let that freak you out, but be mindful of what you're consuming, because that is probably what really stalled me out my first year in business. Be really mindful of what you're consuming. Consume less, create more, right? Invest in the right support that's going to help you keep your blinders on and help you figure out what is your voice to add to the noise, right? So you're not adding to the noise if you actually have something to say, but what's your voice? What's your message? How can you differentiate, and how can you focus? Instead of worrying about that saturation, how can you focus instead on being really diligent about getting noticed online, getting known, right? Building those relationships and selling your work. That is probably something I would want to say to myself. Laura says, loving this, Kim, I agree on knowing too much. I often tell people that it's harder than you think it'll be, but in ways you don't expect. And it's easier than that it'll be, but not necessarily in ways you expect. It's, Laura, it's so exactly that. And I think that's kind of what I was, I think you articulated it better, what I was trying to say, where it's like so many of the things I look back on that I was scared of were not the things. And then there were also things that showed up for me. I was like, wow, I would have never expected this is the challenge I've got to deal with. Like, buckle up, right? Time to like step into that next level of being a CEO. Like, this is some real stuff I've got to deal with. And also so many of the things I thought were going to be super hard just haven't been. And I think it's exactly that. And I think this is maybe also just a fair thing to say with what Laura's saying, then maybe I would say to myself is, and business is hard, but it's not, that doesn't mean you have to work super hard or burn out, but also it does take hard work, and it can be hard to create a lot of ease and to have it look easy and effortless. And that's not wrong or bad, but I know myself, I don't know about all of you, but I actually derive so much pleasure and joy from doing hard work, not working super hard and burning out, but from like working hard in terms of like really thinking about something or being intentional or like figuring out how to make, you know, my copy better or my messaging better or working on my coaching craft a little bit, right? Like I actually find a lot of joy and satisfaction in that. But it does take hard work, and sometimes it is hard, and that's not a bad thing. That is very different than working so hard or making things harder than they need to be. Oops, that's my reminder that I gotta be, that I got to make sure that I wrap this up so I can go switch into coach mode. So that is something that, just to what Laura is saying is coming up for me. Kate says, consume less, create more. Yes to this. And Laura says, yes to enjoying the hard work. Thank you for normalizing this. I'm so glad that that is normalized. And maybe that is just what we'll close on. Like business is hard, but I did a podcast on this. I personally am all about choosing your hard. And when you choose your hard, that's when you also get to choose your easy. This is not my quote. I don't even know who says it, but it's something like when you choose your hard now, you get to have like hard now, easy life later. I think about that in business. Business is hard. I mean, right now it feels so easy to me, but that's because I chose my hard over and over again. And I work very hard in my business. That doesn't mean I work a ton of hours. That doesn't mean that I'm burning out, but I do work hard in that, you know, I put intentional thought and deliberate action into what I'm doing, and I don't just slap things together, and I care deeply about my clients, and I show up for them, and I show up here. And so again, just to normalize that, but to also normalize, I think we hear the word hard and we think that means making it hard or that it has to feel horrible or painful. I actually think those are some of the most, outside like, you know, spending time with my husband and stuff like that it's some of the most joyful parts of my life and day are those hard moments. I mean, who doesn't love like a puzzle that's like hard and then you figure it out and you crack, you know what I mean? Like we forget that doing something hard is often where we feel a lot of satisfaction and joy. And I often probably say it's super easy and it feels joyful and fun because I have forgotten, like I just so associate it that way, but just to normalize that because I think otherwise it can be confusing to someone who's starting out in business. All right, y'all, that is what I've got for you. I'm gonna hop off because I do need to switch mode so I can go support my client. A reminder that we did make 20K months multiplied evergreen for you. I will come back and drop a link for that. We are walking through the 5 components you need to sustainably scale your business to 250K years or above. Please take me up on that. You also get a bonus playbook where you can put this into action and to speed up your results. I think it is a phenomenal masterclass. I will drop a link for that. We are also doing a free session giveaway today, so just comment. I'll also count any replay comments for a VIP strategic scaling planning session. And then, as always, if you're interested in learning more about how I work with my clients, we are starting to book for the next couple of months for my new coaching intensive, Your Marketing Multiplied, which has been phenomenal. I mean, I have to hop off, so I can't tell you all the things right now, but I have just been loving this intensive so much. It is amazing in 1 week what we can do to totally revamp and tighten up your messaging, your positioning, your marketing strategy, and how quickly that can get you on the path to those 10K and 20K months. I'm obsessed. So I will drop links for all of this, and then I'll be back next week and we'll dive into another fun topic. Thank you all for celebrating and being here with me. It means so much. I love you all so much. I will say that I would not be here 8 years later if it weren't for all of you, and I do not take that for granted one moment. So I will try not to cry before I get off because I do have a client call, but it just means so much to me to have this group and to have all of you share this content with me. So thank you for celebrating with me and being here, and I will be back next week. Bye.